Good evening, folks, and a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us for this live stream. 5.5 months ago, on the 1st of July, we all got together and discussed OFCOM's proposals to change the licensing system. Since then, there's been a consultation, and 3 days ago, OFCOM put out the results. We have the results here. We now know what it's going to look like. So, myself and the group of YouTubers all have their own channels, links in the description below. We're going to sit down and have a bit of a chat, a bit of a deep dive, and see what it means for us in the new year when it comes into force. I'll be with you in a minute. Okay, and here we go. We are live. So, quick run around the table then. I think most people know most people on here, but just for completeness, I'd like to do a quick introduction. So, starting at my top left, we have Chris, M0RSF. Evening, Chris.
Good evening, James. Thanks for the invite.
Well, thank you for joining us. So, give us a quick rundown on your channel then. We'll just do a quick introduction for each channel, and then we'll get underway with the proposals.
Okay. My channel, Chris M0RSF, Mike 0 Romeo Sierra Foxtrot, is portable and QRP operation, covering the various award schemes, not just one scheme, various schemes, and some of the little bobs of QRP things on there as well. Okay,
and Chris is, I guess I'd call him our resident QRP expert, because you run QRP from home as well, don't you? You don't run any kind of power from home either.
No. First licensed in 2005 as a foundation. And when I got the full call sign, Mike 0 Romeo Sierra Foxtrot, that were in 2011, I decided to go the QRP route. My main base station radio is the ICOM 705, which does 10 watts.
Great radio. I've got one of those as well. Absolutely love it. Brilliant.
Yep.
Okay, so moving round to my top right, then we have Colin, MM0OPX. Really good channel there, actually. You do. I've been watching your videos earlier today on the NFED half-waves, 49-1s. I'm in the process of just ordered the bits to build one to uprate the power a bit on my one. So give us a quick rundown on your channel.
Hi, James. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so really my channel's kind of building antennas, experimenting with antennas, but with a view to use them field portable, field style type of antennas. But it's mainly experimentation. I've been going down the rabbit hole at the minute of NFED half waves, and I'll probably have another video in another maybe week to 2 weeks, but looking at stacking 3 cores. So this will be very apt for what we're talking about tonight. So the 3 cores of 240-43s or 240-52s. So I'll have some interesting results for anyone that wants to build their own NFED half wave or not, as the case may be.
Yeah, because that's what I was looking at, going off on a bit of a tangent here, but you've got a couple of videos already looking at the difference between 43s and 52s, and from what I can gather, the 52 is slightly better at 80 and 40, but then the 43 takes over on the other frequencies, from what I gather.
You're right, but there's I wouldn't ruin the surprise, but there was a slight mistake in one of the readings. It wasn't massive, but I'll cover that in the next video. It doesn't make a massive difference, but it does make a difference, so that'll be interesting. So don't. Okay. If you're doing a 3 stack, just hold off just now.
Okay, we won't ruin that surprise. And Colin's actually, it looks like he's actually in his shed as well. So hence the woolly hat, thick clothing. He was showing us the temperature gauge just before we went live. So it's a bit chilly, so fair play for live streaming from the shed. Okay, bottom left of my screen we've got Fraser, MM0 EFI. So two of you representing the Scottish fraternity tonight.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And yeah, nice to see Colin on here. First time Colin and I have done something together. I do admire Colin's channel and the detailed work he puts into these antennas, because basically what I do is climb mountains and just chuck a bit of wire up in the air and see what happens. Sometimes with mixed results, but it's always great when you've got somebody that takes the time to do the technical stuff so you can kind of glean information from them. But yeah, I started off doing SOTA channel, but it's kind of morphed into, now it's like the £10 Chinese radio seems to be the latest thing. But it's all aimed at, portable operation, helping people out getting started, and then hopefully encouraging people to get out and just take part in many of the portable programs that are on the go just now, such as Bunkers on the Air, which is nicknamed Bonkers on the Air because it's been a bit mad in the last couple of months.
I like that. Okay, and then we got Jonathan, M0JSX. Now, I really wanted Jonathan on tonight because formerly, of course, quite a while ago now, you worked for Martin Lynch, so you got that professional background.
That's another lifetime ago now. Yeah, yes, I did for my sins. And of course, when the initial consultation came out, I did the the what you need to know video. And I haven't. Do you know what? Everyone else raced to do a video on the fact that the decision was done. I thought, I'm just not going to bother. Everyone else has done it. I don't need to.
I must admit, I thought the same. To be honest, I thought we kind of agreed we'd do a live stream to chat about it. I know a couple of people rushed out to put their videos out. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to take a couple of days, read through it, really understand it, see what changes there are, of which, actually, from what we discussed 5.5 months ago, not that many, if we're completely honest. I thought, let's just digest it, and then I think I'm actually going to go through, look at the questions that Ofcom asked, and actually look at the answers they gave, rather than focus too much on the changes. I think is probably the better way of doing it. Okay, and then finally, then we got the other Chris, 2E0 UKH. Your life's been a bit of a mess recently, hasn't it? Because you've been moving between flats, so you had a bit of a water disaster, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right, and thank you for inviting me on. As a lot of people know, I'm in a block of flats. So I'm like being upstairs in a house. I'm in a flat, and my shower was leaking water on the property below. So for 8 weeks, I've been, moved across the road, and today I moved back again, and I've got boxes absolutely everywhere.
That's a right pain in the backside, Chris.
Absolutely.
Hence, those of you that have seen Chris's live streams in the past, really technical. He's back to basics today on the phone. So absolute fair play to Chris for joining us and taking the time out from his moving house or moving back in schedule. It's not even really a moving house, is it? Because you're moving back into where you moved out of 8 weeks ago.
Yeah, so I'm back to basics on just an iPhone pointing at me on a tripod, and looking forward to the show.
Hey, it works. And just looking at the comments, I'm trying something slightly different. I normally put the comments on my screen down here. I've actually got them on the screen just above the camera up there today. So hopefully I'm not looking away from the camera as I read them. So who have we got? We got Steve, M1SDH evening, and G4LMN, Ron. Stu's with us as well. I did ask Stu to join us tonight. Unfortunately, he's a bit tied up elsewhere. I think he said he's migrating the servers on his Station Master program. So he's got quite a lot on his plate, I think. And we got Jerry with us, and Motters, usual crowd, and Adam, and Gary on the Isle of Wight as well, and Paul. I think that's everyone. Okay, so, I mean, I'm going to start off with this saying the proposals that Ofcom put forward, I think broadly speaking, they're actually a really positive thing. And I'm looking on, for those of you following at home, there is a link in the description if you want to see the document we're looking at. It's 103 pages, so we're not going to go through it page by page. But it gives you an overview of, on page 11, it actually gives you an overview of all the questions they asked and how many people agreed with it and disagreed with it. And I think every single proposal, it was over 50% of people agreed with it. So I think broadly speaking, Ofcom have actually listened. So anyway, there were 17 proposals here. So I think we'll go through them one by one, just a quick comment on each one. So let's start off with question 1, which was the proposal that licensees should only hold a single personal license. Now, this caused a bit of a divide between us the last time we discussed it, because I personally felt I kind of wanted to keep my intermediate call sign for sentimental value, but Ofcom have decided that that's not going to happen, which, like I say, I think it was about 70-something% of people actually said that they agreed with that. So I don't know what you guys think on being stripped of former call signs.
I didn't hold mine for that long, so I'm not too bothered. I was 6 months between foundation and full, so maybe like, it was like 3 and 3-ish, or 4 and 2, something like that. So I'm not too bothered about losing it, but I just wonder if maybe a lot of people that voted were maybe the people that did the old A and B license, because when you got your A license, you had to give up your B. You had to give up your B, Paul. So perhaps that was maybe that's where the majorities come from. I could be wrong on that, though.
I don't think that's quite correct, Colin.
No?
As I understand it with the A and B, so we'll talk about the days we had to pay for your license. You had to pay an annual subscription in order to have your call sign. You could keep your B license if you wanted to, but you have to pay twice.
Okay.
So that's why most people gave up their B license, because they didn't want to pay twice for their 2 licenses.
Yeah.
But I'm generally in favour of this. I think, firstly, this is one of those things that Ofcom are kicking down the road to sort of the phase 3 in terms of when things are going to happen. So nothing here is going to happen until probably 2025, because they're talking about the 24-25 financial year. So broadly speaking, we're going to have our lower licenses for the foreseeable. But even so, given the fact that they are upping the power limits, I think the only reason that people have kept them is possibly if they want to do QRP stuff. Maybe they want to use their old M3 or M6 or M7 call sign for QRP type stuff. But given the fact that a foundation license holder is going to have 25 watts now, and an intermediate is going to have 100 watts, well, actually, where's the point? There's nothing there that, for me, it indicates that you need to keep it.
It does make me wonder as well how many people will go from the intermediate to the full if you get 100 watts with the radio, because unless you can afford to buy a linear amp, which, let's be honest, they're not exactly cheap, how many people are going to stick at 100 watts?
Well, yeah, you say that, but there are other reasons why you would upgrade to a full license. For me, the power wasn't a factor. Yeah, it's nice to be able to turn the radio up to full output power, but for me, it was the fact I wanted to use my license abroad, which is something you're still going to only be able to do on a full license.
Okay, I mean, I think the driver for me was the supervision, because at the time I was involved with the Scouts. So we were getting youngsters involved through the Scouts. So I think for me it was wanting to be able to supervise other people. But of course that brings us on to proposal number 2, which is allow grade to supervise third-party use of equipment. So I believe now the proposal is you can do that as, I think even as, certainly as an intermediate. I'm not sure, was it foundation?
Yeah, you can do it at all 3 levels.
So I don't know. What do we reckon on that, guys? Is that I think that's a positive step in the right direction, getting new people in.
Yep.
Agree. Yeah, I think it's ideal for bringing new people into the hobby, and ideal for things like you said, James, like Scouts and schools and things like that. And are we going to be given a radio to someone to use in their house down the street? I think there'd be like 1 in a million people that would do that. Everybody else would be, respecting the license, I think, and making sure. Yeah,
I think that would probably be a bit of a step too, because there were people that were talking about it in a Raynet context, and I'm not sure how that would work, to be honest, unless you're stood right next to the person.
No, that's right, and then I think we want to be behaving responsibly with something like that, and I think we would. If any of us were doing it, we'd be wanting to be really involved in the actual process and explaining about how the radio works and amateur radio and all this kind of stuff, rather than just saying to somebody, right, here's a mic, off you go.
I'm just looking at Motta's comments in the live chat there. My his XYL just thinks we're all silly and should just use a mobile phone.
My wife says the same.
Yeah, that didn't work last year when we had no electricity for 7 days. The mobile phone network shut down 15 minutes after the power went off.
Yeah, Paul says Raynet need more members. Please look into it if you're not a member. Yeah, we're not soliciting for Raynet here. I'm a member of Raynet, but I can't say I speak for them. I speak for myself. So there we go. Right, so what we got? We got question 3 then. So this is on pages 16 to 18, if you're following in the document, and that was the proposal to release M8 and M9 call signs for intermediates, which personally I really can't see any issue with that if they're running out of call signs. I think they're keen to move away from the 2E0 call signs. So it does beg the question what they're going to do if they're going to revoke the 2E call sign or the 2W call signs.
Was that not a legacy thing? It was before I was licensed, but it was the 2 not an old novice or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. So the old 2 RSL 1 call signs, so 2E1s, 2W1s. Well, that was the old novice call sign, which was was that like, it was something like 20 watts on VHF and above. Someone's going to correct me, I'm sure. And then when the 3 tiers came in, those licenses ended up being intermediate. What I find really interesting here is I agree with it. Like, there's no reason why Ofcom can't introduce an M8 and M9 call sign series. But I can't understand why they're doing it. Because they're not forcing anybody to change their current 2 call sign to an M8 or an M9, although they're going to be able to. And Ofcom are going to start issuing M8 and M9s, but reserve the call signs for people who want to change from 2 calls. It's just one of those things I'm really scratching my head over as to what the driving force for this is, unless it's to do with RSLs, because call signs that start with a 2 are going to be the only licenses, the only call signs where an RSL is mandated.
Okay. Yeah, that's optional at the moment, and to change the 2, it's optional. It's not mandatory at the moment.
It's not mandatory, and according to the proposal, according to what Ofcom have decided, that's going to be the case. It's not going to be a mandatory change, but if you do keep your 2 call sign, you're going to need to continue using the RSL, which we'll come to later on, is going to be optional for everybody else.
Yeah, it says although we will encourage this. Yes, it's voluntary. Just reading that, so that's a strange one.
It makes sense, I think, because then I always think if you're a foreign station working in the UK, you must wonder half the time, unless you're somebody that's on the radio all the time, you must wonder what these 2 echoes and 2 whiskies and all these things actually mean. If everything begins Mike, Mexico, whatever, apart from the sort of legacy call signs, but I suppose then everything will begin Golf or Mexico. There's some instances of that in other countries as well, isn't it? I was working 10 meters the other day, and it was my signal was like a laser into Portugal. All I was doing was working Portuguese stations, and then this station came on beginning with a number, and I thought it was something like exotic. It was like 2 X-ray or something. I was like, what's that? And I messaged a friend on WhatsApp, and he went, "Oh, that's just a Polish foundation license or something like that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Maybe it wasn't like the Congo or whatever.
Looking in the live chat, Steve has summed up quite well, actually, my position on this. He says, my concern would be those losing the 2 whatever 0 calls who would like to keep them, and Ofcom decide to scrap them. So for me, I got lucky with my 2E0. I managed to get my initials. So that's kind of why I've kept it revalidated it and held on to it just for sentimental value. And I do air it sometimes, usually when I'm out portable. So it's sounding like I'm going to have to give that up, but I don't think they're going to reissue it. So I don't know.
The interesting thing with that is, James, they reckon there's 70,000 amateur call signs in the UK, but they reckon by the time they get rid of all the duplicates, there might only be about 30,000.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's trying to reduce the admin.
It's free, it's a free license. We don't pay anything for it. Okay, yeah, we pay our taxes, but so does everyone else. So essentially, we're getting a service that the whole country is helping pay for. So if they want to streamline it, then yeah, let them crack on.
And it's also worth bearing in mind that I think we're quite unique in the fact that we keep our old call signs. I'm just thinking, like, obviously I've gone through the 3 levels of the US exams, and in the US, you have one call sign, that's it. If you want to change your call sign, you can do, and as you progress up the tiers, you can have slightly different call sign formats. So you can, so for instance, a technician call sign is going to be 2 letters, number 3 letters, and then once you get to general, you can then have 1 by 3. But there's no reason why you can't keep your old call sign. It's just updated on the system. So I think it's quite unique in the fact that I have 3 UK call signs. I don't think many countries allow you to do that.
Yeah, an interesting one. So what would happen if you hold you own a 2E0, 2M0 call sign, whatever? You're going to be given 100 watts, so you've no desire to upgrade. You've got a 100-watt transceiver. You use computer login and you've worked 200 DXCCs as a 2E0. And then all of a sudden your call changes to a mic 8 or a mic 9. What happens to your DXCs? Do you have to start a logbook again from 0? What happens in that situation?
You just don't change your call sign.
Just keep the 2E.
Yeah, Ofcom are not forcing. They're
no, it is mandatory.
They're not forcing.
It's optional, isn't it? It is optional, but
I guess that currently applies though, Chris. If someone starts with a foundation and they're doing like DXCC and they're working their way up, then they're going to have different call signs. But I think you can adjust for that if you're using, EQSL or Log of the World or whatever.
Okay, so let's move on to question 4 then, which we've actually already touched on. It's about the regional secondary locators. Now, we've already touched on this a little bit. Now, this was the one that kind of put the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit. I was reading on the forums of a couple of sites earlier today, and people were actually getting quite animated over this. But if you actually look at the responses, 56% of people were actually in favour of it, and 43.6% objected. So I don't know what happened about the other couple of percent in there. I think they probably abstained and didn't answer that. But in some ways, I kind of see where they're coming from, but at the same time, I kind of struggle to see it, because they're saying if you're chasing DXCCs, it's difficult to know where the station is that you're calling. But then at the same time, the option's still there. You can still use it if you want. So I think people are getting quite animated over this when they perhaps don't necessarily need to. Under the
it seems to be the biggest point of contention, doesn't it?
Sorry, Fraser.
I was just saying it does seem to be the biggest talking point out of this whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I noticed. Yeah, you commented on that website as well, didn't you? You're saying, I think you basically said people were getting, well, what I just said, people were getting over animated. If you want to carry on using it, carry on using it. The world continues to spin round. The sun still rises tomorrow. It's is it really that big a deal?
I think this will have a knock-on effect, though. I think that the United Kingdom will become one DXCC entity, because it's going to be impossible for a foreign station, if a station in Scotland, let's just take you, Colin, for instance, if under these proposals you then just sign as M0 OPX, it's going to be impossible to know which of the nations you are in. And therefore, I think this will lead to the ARRL updating the DX entity list to say that the nations are no longer their own entities and that it is just the United Kingdom.
No, there's a real risk of that. I think so.
I can see it happening.
I think it depends how much.
I think for some people it's almost kind of a national identity type thing. I'm reluctant to call it nationalistic. Well, I suppose it is a bit nationalistic, for particularly Welsh, Irish, maybe to some degree Scottish as well. Some people see it as almost like their identity if they were born and raised in that part of the United Kingdom. So I don't know if they feel almost like it's an attack on their identity.
I don't see it like
know.
that, but I don't know. I don't see it like this, but do some people see it that well, if you stay in England, then you've got an advantage because you've got a shorter call sign. I don't see that, but do some people maybe see it like that? Because I don't. I'm just putting it out there.
Well, I think there's probably people see it from both sides of the argument, isn't there? There's people who are in favour of it and some people who are against it. And Stu in the comments makes an interesting point. The complainers are more likely to vote, so the reality is the results are actually probably even more in favour of change than the graphs suggest. I don't know about that. I mean, I don't want to get too political with this, but
just out of interest,
putting the idea out there.
Just out of interest, of the six of us here, I'm very happy to say that on this proposal, I was in the disagreement camp.
Yeah,
I disagreed
okay.
with this question, simply because of the DXCC point, which I know that Ofcom have addressed and basically have said that's not our problem. But that was, so I'm curious, of the six of us here, who else voted against this particular question?
I voted against it. I voted against it. I want to keep it.
Yeah, likewise. I want to keep it as well.
I'll be brutally honest, I didn't get my vote in before the deadline, so I'm not really in a position to complain about this. But from my personal perspective, operating SOTA both in Wales and in England, having to add W in the call sign and remember to say it every time is a bit of a pain for me. I keep forgetting, to be honest. And there's one summit that's right on the border. It depends how ridiculous you want to get about it. There's one summit where the border between England and Wales literally goes along the footpath. So if I operate on one side of the footpath, I have to be Mike Whiskey 0. And then if I move 5 meters in the other direction, I have to be Mike 0. So
that's all right, James. We won't hold it against you.
It's just questions then if you have the transmitter one side of the border and the antenna the other side of the border.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, how ridiculous do you want to get with it? You know, and then you've got the other argument of if you're operating VHF mobile in the car driving across the bridge between England and Wales, across the estuary, you know, at what point do you switch?
There's always going to be cases where it's beneficial. Like I can think like APRS, for instance. Like if you're beaconing when you're moving and you happen to drive down the M4 and go across the Severn Bridge into Wales, it's impractical to pull to the side of the road and either reprogram your radio or your TNC tracker in order to change your call sign. That's not very practical. So I can see there are benefits to it, but I think that the DXCC thing is the crunch point for me on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think most people are just going to carry on using it anyway. I think, personally, I think they've done the right thing in making it optional, but I think the reality is most people are going to carry on as they have been.
Adam makes a point in the chat. If you're in England and you hear, and you're on 2 meters and you hear Mike 0 Echo Foxtrot India, your ears are going to perk up. That's like DX, isn't it? On 2 meters. So, there's a valid reason for, as well as national identity, there is a valid reason for using it certainly on some bands. If you're a microwaver and you heard somebody from a different country, you'd be excited. As for your excuse about being forgetful, James, I was like that as well when I first started, going to different countries or whatever. But, when I was in the States a few months ago, you were moving from state to state and you were having to change the prefix on your call sign, Whiskey 0, Whiskey 7, whatever. And I think it's one of these things. We are supposed to be, it's a technical hobby, practice makes perfect. We're supposed to, by the time we get to our level of license, be proficient. We make the odd mistake, but it's just one of these things we kind of have to cope with.
So, out of curiosity then, how many of us are going, especially those of us in England, are going to start using the new E prefix as an option?
No, I mean...
I've never used one of the special RSLs that for the Jubilee or the Coronation or anything like that. I've never used any of those. I don't plan on using E in my call sign either.
Yeah, I must admit I gave that one a miss as well. But like I said, I wanted to talk about that point a bit because it has been one of the big talking points that has got people a little bit riled up. And as we've seen tonight, we even between the six of us on here, we have differing opinions. So it's interesting to see. And okay, sticking with suffixes then, because that's proposal number 5. For people to be able to use any kind of suffix they want. Is that going to cause confusion? Is my question.
Well, that's going to be a riot, isn't it? If people can use a suffix that's 25 characters long, or Mike 0 Echo Foxtrot India / Fraser Wedseth. Would that be acceptable?
This is one of those things that it's going to be down to the individual to just apply a bit of common sense, because I can understand Ofcom's point of view on this. It's like, it doesn't matter. From a regulatory point of view, it just does not matter. So, I mean, yeah, like signing stroke QRP, or like there are situations where that's actually quite useful. Particularly when, particularly if we think about an intermediate license is going to be 100 watts, well, then actually, if they are running QRP, it might be nice to say stroke QRP in order to prick up the ears of the person they're calling. So, yeah, it's one of those. We just need
my personal view, I think it's going to, when it first comes in, I think there's going to be a bit of a novelty factor. You're going to hear some really fantastic, ridiculous suffixes like lawnmower mobile or whatever, while someone's cutting the grass with their lawnmower.
On the beach.
I think it'll last a few months. Then once the novelty's worn off, I think people will settle down and it'll go back to just as we are now, what people do normally. I think you'll get that initial stupidity, and then people will hopefully see a bit of sense.
Seems to be a bit of a European thing, doesn't it? And you go to foreign countries, they don't often use them. Certainly in the States, they don't use them the same way that we do.
Yeah, James, can I just ask a quick question, please?
Go on.
Yeah, I mean, we've got these proposals. Out of us guys on the panel, is everyone going to go ahead and change their call sign and accept the new conditions? I mean, I'm on the fence on this. There's not really a lot in it for me. I'm not bothered about doing high power, not particularly bothered about I'd like to do remote, but I don't really want to change my call sign. Is everyone?
Well, from my point of view, I don't think it really means any big change to me, does it? I mean, in terms of, I'll keep my current call sign. Just means I don't have to add the prefix, the Mike Whiskey every time I go over the border. The biggest change, and I'm allowed 1 kilowatt if I want to sink 2 to 3 grand into an amplifier. Apart from that,
it'd be interesting to see if the local Welsh boys might not work you on 2 meters there, James, if you don't put the whiskey in your call sign.
That might be interesting. Yeah, well, I don't tend to work 2 meters on summits very often these days. So I tend to be more 40 meters. But yeah, there's a fair point. See if anyone protests. Okay, and then so question number 5. Then they're asking about the proposal to simplify terms of the license and suffix, which, yeah, I think we've already covered. I think broadly speaking, anything that simplifies it is going to be a positive thing. Why make things more complicated than it needs to be?
No, exactly. I think. I mean, just worth mentioning on this one. I think also touches on the fact of reissuing old call signs. It's just worth noting that Ofcom have changed the time periods. It's going to be 5 years rather than
exactly.
2.
So, yeah, worth noting. I think Ofcom did actually listen to what people said on this.
I suggested 5 years to them in my response. I just felt that 2 years wasn't quite long enough. 5 years, I think, was some people calling for much longer and calling for licenses never to be reissued, which is just ridiculous. So yeah, I think 5 year grace period is acceptable.
I think that's sensible. And that kind of comes under question 6, really, which was amending the call sign assignment policies, which, hang on, if I find the page.
24.
What about then, the second part of that is about changing your call sign periodically. What's everyone's? Would anyone want to change their call sign?
Not
No.
really, I don't think.
No.
No. I looked at it briefly years ago, but it was a great uncle. He stayed up Mangus, and he was originally 6KO. So I looked into that, and because it was off that kind of other side of the family, but that was when OFCOM had that slight window there when they were letting people change them, but they kind of closed it. So when that finished, I didn't bother. So I'm not going to bother now.
Yeah.
It was only because there was a family. It was only because there was a distant family link there. I thought that would have been good, but other than that, nope.
Yeah, I think the only way I'd look at doing it is if I can get, for example, if I could get M0JJD, because I had 2E0JJD. So if I could get my initials, then I might, but it's already issued, so someone's already got it, so no can do.
Yeah, but there's no reason why under this proposal or under the new rules that you couldn't get a G call sign with JJD.
Yeah, maybe.
Can I also mention at this point that another YouTube, I'm not going to use personality, but another YouTube content
I think I know what you're going to say, yeah.
Was wrong in what they said, because he said that you're going to be able to get a 2-letter call sign. You're not. Post-war call signs only, so only call signs that have a 3-letter suffix that don't start G2, you're going to be able to get.
Yeah, I did pick up on that, actually. Yeah, like I said, I don't want to embarrass the individual, but yeah, I think...
I think he does that to himself, to be fair.
I'm saying nothing. But, yeah, moving on before we drop ourselves in it.
Any more?
Yeah, any more than we already have. Yeah, no, I don't like being unkind to people, but yeah, you're right. He didn't do himself any favours there. You would hope he would have read the document before rushing to put the video. And that comes back to what I said at the beginning, where I didn't want to rush out the video too early. Wanted to make sure we got the facts right. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of these questions they asked actually interlink with each other, because number 7 is implementing consistent rules on the number of call signs that can be held, which we kind of touched on earlier, really, with only holding one call sign.
It is, but this one also, this question was also related to club call signs. So a club is only going to be able to hold up to 5 call signs. There was a bit of pushback in terms of clubs needing more than 5 call signs. Personally, I've never been in a club where 5 call signs are being used all at the same time. So yeah, that question was also related to that as well.
It does beg the question, because our Raynet group, I think we got 3 call signs. We only ever used one of them. So
exactly, yeah.
I just think why, but yeah. Simplifying special event calls. I think this is a good thing, because you're going to be able to apply for it online, I believe, now, when this goes into effect, which should make it easier.
Well, they're going to do anything that cuts back on civil servants. It's modernisation.
Yeah,
system.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Exactly.
I think I think you're right with this one. I mean, obviously, you can already apply online for a standard special event call sign, so a GB number and then 3-letter suffix you can get anyway. But it's just the sort of the more out there requests like GB 100s, that kind of thing is going to be easier to get, and yeah, I think it's a good thing.
I mean, I think the current one, we've been using these suffixes for jubilees and coronations and prefixes even, I can't remember. But we had to fill in a form, the RSGB handled that. But am I right in thinking that if they did something like that again, we could just start using it? There wouldn't be any paperwork at all?
Yes, in terms of the special RSLs, yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, then the big one that everyone's jumped on question 9, and hold on, I just want to see actually how many people actually supported this.
82.4%.
Oh, there you go. You're quicker than I am with this. So, yeah, I mean that's the big one, isn't it? 1 kilowatt for most of us. Sorry. So, yeah, for those of you watching, Fraser and I have got a bit of the old man flu. So if we cough every couple of minutes, bear with us.
And we'll all take a step back from us.
I'm self-medicating.
I mean, how much is what linear going to cost? What is the most affordable? I mean,
I think it depends what you go for. I was looking yesterday just out of curiosity. I think the ACOM valve amplifiers for something that does about a kilowatt, you're looking probably about 1,200 quid, I think, 1,200 to $2,000. And then if you go solid state, I think you're...
2.5, James, for an ACOM 1K valve,
Yeah,
it'd be 2.5,
two-
2.6,
yeah, I
maybe,
went
2.6.
2.5, yeah.
Yeah.
And
To be
then,
honest, though, and this is something that I've been banging my head against the brick all over, is seeing how many people in all of the forums and Facebook groups and everything like that saying, oh, well, it means I've got to go out and buy a new amplifier now. Does it? Really?
Why?
Honestly?
Why?
Exactly. If you're happy with what you've currently got, whether that be just the 100 watts that comes out of your radio, or whether that be, an amplifier that is capable of producing 500-600 watts, then it doesn't matter. Like, carry on as you are. Off you go. You're still going to make the same number of contacts.
The people that are going on about this, I think, of people that maybe not used amplifiers going on about radios blown up, ATUs blown up. It's a total misnomer. I've had my ACOM 1K. I bought it new 2013, I think, and I used one in the club for the time before that, and I bought the ACOM 1K because it's an absolutely bulletproof amplifier. I was single, I was able to buy it, so I bought it, and I've still got it, and it's still like new. And I rarely use it. I did use it for a fair bit when I first got it. I had a hex beam as well, and by the time the amplifier warmed up, which was 90 seconds, I had worked the contact on 100 watts or less. And it gave me the headroom, so it makes no difference. And I know that the ACO 1K will do a good bit more than 1K. It'll do about 1,200 watts on the lower bands, and don't ask me why, or how, but it will. But it'll make not one bit of difference. The difference going between 400, 400 watts at 5 dB, whatever that is. People that's going to run that power are going to run that power anyway. So it's just a paperwork exercise as far as I can see.
Yeah, the people that seem to be complaining about it seem to be, I think it's a lot of the QRP guys saying, oh, we're going to get trampled on. But
no, it's no different. They're going to notice no difference. There will be no noticeable difference.
No, I agree. I think, it's...
The thing is, we're already competing with a lot of nations in Europe who have far higher output power limits. So, yeah, it's going to make absolutely no difference. If you're QRP now and you're having to deal with Italians running 1,500 watts or more, nothing's going to change.
If you put up your kilowatt into an end-fed half-wave dipole, whatever, you're not going to be a superstation. If you go into... You go in at 20 meters, exactly. You go into 20 meters and you say, "Oh, I worked the States today, or I worked somebody." Go and look at what they're running. The chances are that station's doing all the heavy lifting. But I'm not taking it away that it's still good that we work them on our wires, but they're doing the heavy lifting. They're running stacked beams, whatever, but they're doing the heavy lifting. That's where it should be.
I think the thing is, like we've already said, an amp that big is going to cost you at least a couple of grand, maybe nearer $3,000.
$3,000,
solid
closer to
state.
$3,000.
So. How many people can actually afford that? I mean, I don't mind admitting I've got a reasonably good job. I'm on a reasonably good salary, and I can't afford to sink $2,000-3,000 on a large amplifier.
No.
I've got my 300 watt down here, which cost about $1,000 brand new. I got it slightly cheaper second hand.
I think that the contesters will benefit from that, because we've talked about leveling the playing field, and it will level the playing field with many other countries and continents. And we do a lot of portable ops between us. I mean, we know Colin works in his back garden kind of as well a lot of the time. But the guys that are doing portable, what it's like on a contest weekend, especially on 40 meters, really, really struggle. I think when the 40 meter contests next year will be interesting to see. Because you've got used to UK stations all running a kilowatt into beams or whatever, it's going to be a bit of a mess.
I think they were running it already, Fraser. I think these big contest stations are doing it already. They might say
you're probably right.
More, but they're doing it anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
Be absolutely honest,
And then what about the power increases for the lower classes of license to the foundations up to 25? Personally, I think good move.
Yeah,
definitely a good move.
Yeah, good move that. It was going to be 20 watts, wasn't it, originally? But a lot of the transceivers nowadays go from 10 watts to 25, didn't they? So they've added the extra. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think my Yaesu FT8800. I think more the VHF, and UHF rigs. I think they go up in steps. I think the steps on mine are 5 watts, 10 watts, 25 watts, and 50. I think. So I can see where they've done that. You could argue, well, you're burning 5 watts in the coax cable, but why not just give you the extra 5 watts?
Just a number, isn't it? It's just a number.
Yeah, exactly. Then 100 watts for intermediate stations. The complaint that seems to come up a lot with this is it's going to discourage people from going on doing the full license. But does it really? Well, whether it does or not, does that really matter? If people got the license, they're doing what they want, they're happy.
What's your opinion, Chris?
At the end of the day.
You've still got you're not fussy for upgrading, are you? Or are you?
Not particularly. Power doesn't. You're talking to me, not the other.
Yeah, I'm talking to you, Chris. Chris.
Impress me, and I think 25 watts for the foundation is very usable. They might be disappointed in terms of the number. But like we said earlier, before we went live, the Transman radios, they were designed to do 20 odd watts for a reason, because it's good signal improvement, but it's very economical, on the battery, and the performance, long, you can be on the air for a long time. And while you just asked me about the power, I was thinking, I think it could be pretty obvious that the foundation have got the greatest gain, even in terms of the whole thing. Would you agree? Even though they've not got the highest weight increase.
But then here's an interesting point for you. There's a short on my channel, a short video. I did an experiment with linear amps. I ran my radio barefoot into an SDR at 10 watts. And then I bought the linear amp in, which took it up to just short of 300 watts, about 250 to 300 watts. And the difference was roughly just over, I think it was about 10 dB, just over an S point, nearly 2 S points.
The difference I notice with the amplifier is talk power. Your voice and your volume goes up, but not necessarily the S meter. So I think that's what it is. I've witnessed it on 40 meters where guys going from 100 watts down to less than a watt, and they go down a couple of S points, but they go really, really quiet. But the S meter is still quite strong, so I think that's the difference. Yeah,
well, Stu says it helps in heavy QSB, which is true, but I think it also helps with. We got a lot of people live in a noisy area, so I think if you can lift your signal up sort of that S point, then it might just get you above the noise. So I think, I'm not saying amps aren't beneficial, but I don't think they're necessarily the be-all and end-all.
Oh, of course not. Definitely not.
I do agree with it. I think the QSP is probably the greatest point, actually, because, being a portable QRP operator, my signal is quite prone to fading, whereas the signal coming into me quite often isn't when someone's running a bit more power. So I think that's definitely helpful for everyone.
Okay, so our next point, and this is one that Chris and I actually talked about earlier today, off air before we started, enabling all licensees to use internet-based technologies for remote control operation. Now, where I see this being really beneficial is in Chris's case as a 2E0. I think as it stands at the moment, I'm not sure if you're allowed to use remote operation, are you, via the internet? But,
no, you're not. No.
Under the proposals, you will be able to. So potentially, when we were talking about, I don't know if this will happen, but we were talking about maybe doing a live stream where I let Chris remote into my Flex radio down here. So that's where I see this being really useful for people who are in compromised locations in flats where they perhaps can't get an antenna up.
I don't know why that exists in the first place. So was it to encourage people to upgrade because there's no other reason why they would restrict foundation or intermediate for that in the first place? To be honest, I think the last time these rules were updated was quite a while ago, probably in sort of 70s, 80s, 90s, probably before the internet became what it is. So when they devised the existing rules as they stand today, they probably hadn't considered the possibility that someone could be using this
mysterious internet that probably didn't exist at the time to control the radio remotely.
I was just going to say,
take on it.
A lot of clubs, I think radio clubs will be doing this, sharing their station, that's in a good location, like my one. It's in a good location, low noise, and people like myself would really benefit from being able to use a remote station when you're stuck in a flat, or be a really good experience to someone might not even be able to afford a HF radio, but they can go on one when they've just joined the hobby.
Yep,
exactly. So yeah, I think it's a really positive change, to be honest. I don't see why they didn't do it sooner. But,
yeah, that's the big one for me. That's the big one for me, using remote.
Okay, and then here's another one that caused a bit of a stir. Deployment of repeaters without the requirement for an NOV. Some people got a little upset about that. I think from the Raynet guys, I think they really liked it. Although, to be fair, Raynet were already doing it under a permit scheme before this came in.
Which was never legal.
Well,
there was nothing ever legally binding about the Raynet talk-through permit scheme that they operate. Despite what Raynet will tell you. Personally, I think it's good. As far as I can see, lots of the objections to it came from the RSGB's ETCC. And in terms of frequency management. But I think Ofcom are right in what they've put. It's going to be down to you to make sure you're not causing any undue interference with what you put on the air. And all I can say is that my All-Star node will be going, as soon as this comes into force, my All-Star node will be going onto a proper outside antenna and not just into a dummy load, because I can.
Yeah,
and how many people have been doing it anyway is the thing. Everybody's got these little things lying about the house, haven't they? They cost Raspberry Pi Zero, and a 20 quid board. So folk have been using them, leaving them turned on illegally for years now. So it legalises that. The question is, will people stick to the 5 watt CRP? Because that takes a little bit of work that some people might not want to do, which, the output of your radio, coax losses, the gain of your antenna, etc., etc. But, at the moment, you have to do that calculation if you want to run a digipeater or something like that to get your NOV. So will people bother doing it? I'm not so sure.
Jonathan, can I do the same? Sorry to interrupt. Can I do the same as a 2E0?
Yeah.
Put my node on an outdoor antenna?
Yeah, you can do this. It's all licensed classes are going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
To be fair, in the comments, I mean, Nathan sums it up quite nicely. Same as jumping on someone else's frequency. Don't be a idiot and have fun, I think, is a fair comment.
Also means that, if you live in a fairly rural town, or even sort of somewhere fairly urban, and you don't happen to have a node yourself, well, if Bob down the road has got his on sort of a wide area access, well, you can use his. Brilliant.
But do we think this is going to lead to a lot of people, a lot of empty repeaters out there, like swamped with even more no activity?
Well, that's the risk, isn't it? I mean, you're hoping that people will be sensible about it. But
I suspect it's going to have absolutely no impact at all in terms of repeater utilization. It's already at a record low level anyway. I think it's just going to give a bit more flexibility. And I think the best thing that repeater keepers can do with their repeaters is internet connect them in some way and offer more than it just being a standalone repeater.
Yeah, Stu says never rely on people being sensible. Something that's just jumped out on me in the comments. Steve says, have you spotted the typo that gives foundation 25 watt PEP on 430, 432? and intermediate and full 40-watt ERP. Is there a mistake in there? I've not picked up on that one, to be honest.
I haven't, but I've not gone. I didn't look down that far in the document because that's going to be right at the bottom.
That might be something to look at offline. It's like I say, it's not something I picked up on. Steve, if you've got a page number for that from the document, just drop it in the chat. We'll have a quick look.
Well, I'm having a look now, so I can find it. So 430 to 432. Okay.
First two on 70 Sims is
430,
lower power.
432. Oh yeah, no, he's right. Yeah, it is.
Oh, there's a
40
typo
watts.
in there, is there?
40 watts between 430 and 432 megs, and then for a foundation license holder is 25. Yeah, it is right. I don't know whether that is a typo or not, to be honest. I'm not quite sure what the current license says power output on those bands.
I must admit I don't really use 70 Sims, so it's not one I'm overly familiar with.
I certainly don't use that part of the band very often.
Okay, liberalisation of foundation licenses to allow them to build their own equipment and access the 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz bands. I mean, if someone's technically proficient, I don't see why they can't build their own equipment. It's not something that I personally intend to do, but if someone's capable of doing it, why not? Now, as for 2.4 gigs, I think that is a good thing because you've got the QO100 satellite here. So that's going to allow foundations to use QO100. So I see that as a good move.
Absolutely agree. I think it's good to get people building, isn't it? When they start the hobby, and even just simple projects. A lot of people, there's an uptick in CW now, isn't there? And there's a lot of cheap kits. You build CW transceivers, so you can see that becoming more popular for sure.
Thing is, they could build kits already. They could build commercially. They could build, foundation holders could build any commercially available kit. So I think this is obviously giving them the same as everyone else, so they could build anything from scratch. I assume that's what the difference is. And what's the risk to that? Zero, really.
Yeah.
It's obviously just make sure they're not putting out spurious emissions or whatever. I think that's the reason why the original rule was that only they could only build commercial kits, but. So it makes sense.
I think the thing is with a lot of these rules, it's about OFCOM policing it as well. How are they going to police whether someone's built their own rig or not?
Exactly.
Why put the rule there if they can't enforce it?
True.
Okay, and then the final point. Well, I say final point. There's license format terms and conditions 16, 17. I think all they're doing is realigning that with a lot of other licenses, some of the wording to align with the business class licenses, I think. But the final one I wanted to look at was airborne use on some bands. I think I'd have to double check. Wasn't that only on bands that were primary user? I think it was 70 Sims. I can't remember exactly.
And it's half a watt EIRP.
Yeah, because I know there were a lot of people saying, well, wouldn't people use it on 2 meters where we're not primary users or something? I think I read
we are primary users. We are primary users on 2 meters. It was whether we could use it on 70 cents, we absolutely.
Your half a watt could go a long way from a balloon or if you're in a light aircraft or something like that.
Well, that's something I'd like to try, actually, because I used to, my license is expired now, but I actually used to fly, and there's a couple of guys live locally who fly around Swindon area, so it might be interesting to get in touch with them when it comes into effect, see if we can arrange a bit of a jolly and a bit of an experiment. Potentially could be a good video, but we'll see how we go with that one.
Has anybody worked an aeronautical mobile? Anybody ever worked one?
I've heard one once on HS.
Yeah, I've heard one once. I've never worked one.
No.
only when I'm flying. I've worked aircraft to aircraft, but that was on aviation frequencies, not amateur frequencies. So I don't think we can count that.
No, I think it is relatively common. It's just there's not that many pilots do it, but I think there is UK pilots that do it. But I think they just wait until they're outside UK airspace. Is that? I think that's correct.
Yeah.
And then they can use it.
I don't know.
I'm not sure what the current license conditions say, because Ofcom are very explicit when it comes to about. There's been a document about maritime mobile and the fact that they don't have jurisdiction over the high seas. So whether they would frown upon you signing as your call sign stroke aeronautical mobile.
If you're out, but then you would need to sign as something else. You'd need to sign with a prefix as something else, because you'd be, but then you wouldn't be. You'd be like maritime mobile.
Yeah,
you're right.
exactly.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
It is a real interesting one. So the US are quite explicit with it in the fact that in the US you are allowed aeronautical mobile and have done for some time. And even you're allowed to sign that as aeronautical mobile over international waters in the same way that you can sign maritime mobile. So, yeah, Ofcom, I think, have just left a little bit of a grey area here in how far the jurisdiction goes if you're above water.
Yep.
Nathan says, what about parachute mobile? And I was going to say, I think there is actually a guy in the States, I can't remember his name, who did that, wasn't there?
Yeah, Carlos, KD9.
OLN.
OLN, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I think he did it at one of their big
he did it over Dayton.
over there. Yeah.
He did it at Dayton, yeah. He did it a few times at Dayton.
He generated quite a big pile-up, I think, when he went for it.
As long as he didn't pile in, James.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, you don't want to be, just one more, last call, I can't take any more, I'm running out of time, Yeah, I mean, I think that's all the points we wanted to cover tonight, and as I said at the beginning, I think, broadly speaking, it's a really positive thing. The rules needed updating, bring the hobby up to date, so I think... Yeah, overall, there's one or two things I wasn't keen on. Like, I expressed reservations over giving up old call signs. Well, that is what it is, A couple of people weren't keen on the RSL situation, but I think, broadly speaking, overall, it's a really good thing. So, I don't know, quick round the table then. So, what do we think are each of our highlights? Anything that we really... dislike or really, really like, anything that's going to really affect us. Chris, M0RSF?
Nothing changes for me, James, to be fair. What I do today, I'll still do tomorrow and the day after. Natalie and I, we're heading down to Wales in June next year. North Wales, we're staying in Anglesey. I'll sign as Mike Whiskey Zero. I'll still use the stroke P on the end. Nothing really changes for me, to be fair, with this.
It's like I said earlier, I think most people will carry on as normal. Colin?
Yeah, just carry on as normal. Valves are very expensive things, so I don't plan to, as soon as I turn my ecom on, to turn it right up. That's just been a tight Scotsman. That's all that is. So no, there's not a lot really. Just the RSL thing. I'm not in agreement with that. I think that's
a lot of people dislike that. To be fair,
we're split on that, and I would hate to see the UK come under as one DXEC, but. That's a fair point Jonathan made, so we'll just have to time will tell what happens with that.
And I think the whole lamp thing as well. I mean, people are making a big fuss about the 1 kilowatt, but as I said earlier, how many people are actually going to go out and plough $2,500-3,000 into an amplifier?
No, they're not.
Exactly. Fraser?
Yeah, I think I'll continue doing exactly the same thing that I've been doing for the last wee while, and do it in exactly the same way. I've got a Tokyo High Power 1 kilowatt amp sitting gathering dust on the shelf over there, and I think it will continue to gather dust on the shelf over
there. Jonathan, anything have a major effect on you, or just carry on regardless?
Carry on as normal, to be honest with you. I think the bit that got me most excited was the bit surrounding repeaters and and nodes and gateways, because I'd like to put an APRS digipeater on, which has always been a hurdle because I wasn't going to go down the route of applying for a special call sign for it and all of that nonsense. So being able to do one at 5 watts, great, and the same with repeaters and etc. To echo Colin in regards to RSLs, that's something I'm less keen on. I think the way that Ofcom are playing it is very trying to please everybody, to be fair, but I do fear that that the UK may get downgraded to just a 1DX entity, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Paul says it perfectly. Just carry on enjoying the hobby, which, you know, it's hobby. Why get excited and animated? You know, as long as we get to carry on as we are, then what's the problem? And finally, Chris.
Yeah, well, the increased power doesn't really interest me. I mean, it'll be nice, but it would just make your battery. You know, I use a lot of batteries in the car. There's your batteries, and they'll go flat quicker. What Jonathan said about, I never thought about that, using your All-Star node with a greater range. That's a good idea. Using remote, that really interests me. And Jimbo said, I've got my eye on his station already. Correct. We've already discussed that. Not really keen on losing my call sign. So like I said, I'm still on the fence with, you know, because, you know, it sounds pretty petty, but, you know, we've all got videos and stuff with our call signs in and branding, yeah, intros, you know what I'm saying. And so definitely more for than against, anyway, put it that way.
Okay, so just to round up then, I've got in here it says the next steps, the approach to implementation. So it's coming in 3 phases. First phase, they're saying by the end of February next year. So that's going to be a third-party supervised operation, optional use of the RSLs with the use of E for England if you want, and special call sign provisions, and increased transmit power. So this is all the stuff that's going to come in first, and also foundations to access 2.4 gigs, build their own equipment, airborne use. So this is all coming in, well, they say by the end of February next year. So hopefully fairly quickly by the sound of things. And then further into the future, to be later in 2024, they're going to start issuing the M8, M9 call sign prefix. Restriction on the number of call signs. Now, the way I read that is that's going to be a restriction on the number of call signs they issue rather than revoking call signs, I think. I hope I've read that.
That's the
correctly.
bit about how many call signs you can hold in a club. That's that bit.
Yeah, because then when we go on to phase 3, which is later in the 2024-25 financial year, bearing in mind, I think financial year is March through to March, I think, or is it May through to May? I can't remember. So we're really into sort of very late 2024, early 2025. I think that's where they're going to start changing their computer system, making it easier to make changes online. And then they start talking about license revocation of lower license as licensee progresses. So I guess that's going to be taking away M3 and 2E zeros, etc., etc. So that's kind of the time plan for anyone wondering. So with that, quick look through the comments. Anything we've missed?
Nice Kev there, our boat driver, Kevan, he's in the comments.
Oh, is he? I missed that. Evening,
Yeah.
Kevin. Oh, yeah, there he is. Been 2E0 for 18 years. Never had any station confused as to where I was. Fair comment. Stu says if anyone wants to remote in to use my 1K station, £25 an hour, please. I'm not sure what the legality is on that, making money from amateur radio. Isn't it meant to be non-commercial? I don't know, actually.
Well, that's very good. I mean, if you advertise the service on air, that's probably falling foul of the rules. But actually, the service itself probably doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know on that. That's a good question.
It's done in the States all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that would be. No, I think that would be okay.
I know they do it in the States because if you've got a US license, there's a service you can sign up to where you.
It's so expensive.
Yeah,
it is so expensive.
I wanted to do my US license to do the odd mega station occasionally over there, but I don't think I can justify it. To be honest,
I'll certainly be one of the examiners for you, James.
Okay, can you do that?
Yeah, I'm a VEC, so I can.
I might have to talk to you offline on that one then.
Okay,
we'll see on that. Okay, so with that, I mean, look, guys, we've been going just over an hour. I think we've covered everything. So I'm going to say a big thank you to the 5 guys for joining me, to Chris, Colin, Fraser, and Jonathan. Big thank you for joining me yet again on this, and big thank you to the guys in the live chat as well, watching at home. Hope we've covered everything we need to, answered a few questions, and if I don't speak to you all before, I guess have a great Christmas.
Yep.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Happy Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, James.
Right.
Merry Christmas
Thanks
to you
a lot,
all.
guys. I'm just getting my mouse in the right position. I click this button, it's all over. Right. Thanks a lot, folks. 7-3. Good night.
7-3. Bye-bye.